Hey guys, Languagehacker here, and I'm going to show you part 1 of my card review for United and Stormwind. Let's dive right in. We're going to review all the cards that have been shown so far, and then we'll be doing that again in likely 2 more videos when we have another couple of sets of card dumps. Let's start off. Flightmaster Dungar, we've seen this already before the initial dump happened and before the card reviews, the card reveals have started happening. Battlecry 333. Battlecry, choose a flight path and go dormant. Awaken with a bonus when you complete it. So you either go dormant for 1, 3, or 5 turns, and the payoff is either 1, you spawn a 2/2 adventurer, you restore 10 health to your hero in 3 turns, or you deal 12 damage randomly split among enemies. This card's a little flexible. I don't think it's super powerful. It's probably going to be like somewhere between the 25th to 30th card in your deck if you want to include it, but I think there's better cards to include. This is okay in tempo decks because of the first option. It's immediately it's a delayed 3 mana 5/5 split over 2, which can be good. So it's not awful, but it's not so powerful that you just want to include in every tempo deck. The healing could be useful in more slow defensive decks, so you might see this in something like Warlock. I don't think we're running this for the purpose of this payoff, though, in most decks. It's just too slow and inconsistent. Think of Imprison and Tame, but really slow. So this card's going to be very fringe. Rune Mithril Rod, Warlock card. It's a weapon, actually. 3 mana, 2 durability. After you draw 4 cards, reduce the cost of cards in your hand by 1 and lose 1 durability. And it's not reduce only the cards that you drew from the 4 cards. It's everything in your hand gets reduced by 1. So it's kind of an Emperor Thorson type effect. I think this is going to be very powerful. This is good. You won't be seeing it in Zoo or anything, but I'm not even sure if Zoo exists. This is a good card. Peasant. 1 mana, 2/1. At the start of your turn, draw a card. Poop. Stat line's too poopy at the start of your turn. This dies to add everything. All the pings and any minion. If it was at the end of the turn, maybe, but this is unplayable. Ramming mounts. So mounts are something that they've introduced. I think there's going to be 1 for each class, if I'm not mistaken. I may be mistaken about that. But basically, each class that has mounts will have this type of effect. It's give a minion +X+X. In this case, for 100, it's +2/+2. And immune while attacking. When it dies, summon a ram. So that's the mount effect. You give it +X+X and an effect. When it dies, you generate another mount that has that same stat line, which would be a 2/2, with the same effect. So the 2/2 ram left over would be immune while attacking. This is pretty okay. I think it's fine. Immune while attacking, you're basically giving it an infinite divine shield while you have attacking with it, while you're attacking with it. So this can make you control board really nicely, which is kind of important for Hunter because you kind of need to stick minion damage when you can. This could open the way for a more control type Hunter if you have good control of the board type tools. And with some of the cards we'll see later, I think this is pretty decent. I don't think it's an auto-include, but I think it's pretty good. Heavy Plate. This is another mechanic that's been included. Tradable, gain 8 armor. This is a warrior card. Tradable means you can drag this into your deck to spend 1 mana and shuffle it back into your deck to draw a new card. And there's going to be a few cards that we see. I mean, this is new to this expansion, so I'm going to be seeing quite a few of them. But so far, what's been shown so far, there haven't been that many tradable. But some of the ones that have been shown are pretty good. I think the tradable mechanic is very powerful because it gives you more consistency in your draws. It still costs you mana, so it is a bit of a disadvantage as opposed to just having the card that you want, but it helps mitigate some bad draws. This in particular, I don't think is very good. One thing that Control Warrior in particular is missing is armor gain, but having armor gain just on a card with nothing else doesn't seem very good. And an example of this is Ironhide. Ironhide didn't really see play. And this does have tradable, so it's a bit more flexible. You can shuffle it back into your deck for something else, but this isn't like a shield block. Shield block was useful because you gain the armor and also draw a card. There's some payoff. This is just gain armor. And gaining armor is useful, but I don't think it's useful enough to actually run the card by itself. So I don't think this will see much play. Pandaren Importer, 2 mana, 1/3 neutral. Battlecry, discover a spell that didn't start in your deck. So this gives me Scorpid vibes, but the important discerning factor here is that the spells you discover have to not be in your deck at the start of your game. So it means if you put in a Renew in your deck, you can't discover Renew with this. Even if you've already drawn the Renews, if the Renew is in your deck at the start of the game, you can't discover that. So it does limit the discover a little bit. I think this is still decent, but similar to kind of Flightmaster Dungar, this will not be one of the first few cards you put in your deck. If you have slots left over in your control generator, I don't know, priest type deck, it doesn't have to be priest, but as an example, you might throw this in just for some extra discover. A lot of the things that priests, for example, because this is so popular lately, discover is weird stuff that is perfect for the situation. Sometimes they find Holy Nova, sometimes they find Against All Odds, a Wave of Apathy to buy a turn. So even though you're discovering cards that aren't in your deck initially, they can still be useful. So if there's space in the decks and you have some, you know, slots left over, you might include Pandaren Porter, just for some extra value generation. Dark Bishop Benedictus, 5 mana 5/6. So stat line is pretty good. Start of game. If the spells in your deck are all shadow, enter shadow form. And shadow form means that you do your hero power as priest turns into deal 2 damage instead of heal 2 damage. This effect is pretty good. You have basically an upgraded mage hero power, but the condition here is that obviously all the spells in your deck have to be shadow, which means you can't run Renew, Holy Nova, Apotheosis, stuff like that. So you lose some of the healing ability that you would normally have as priest. You can still run card generation, i.e. Scorpid, Wand Maker, that can help you discover holy spells to kind of mitigate this restriction. But I think the priest playstyle really wants you to have the healing right now. If there are enough support cards, if we see some other things revealed that help with this, maybe this is pretty good. I don't think this is a bad card. It's going to be more of a fun deck, though, until we see more support for it. Very cool card, though. I like this. And honestly, 5/5/6 is good as well. One of the downsides to cards like these that are game-changing can be poopy stat lines, but this is acceptable. Fire Sale, 4 mana mage card. It's a tradable card as well. It's a spell, fire. Deal 3 damage to all minions. This is a pretty good AoE. 4 mana, deal 3 AoE. Excellent. It's also tradable, which means that in matchups where you don't need board control, maybe slower matchups, or when you already have multiple AoE cards in hand, or you just don't happen to need it at the time, spend 1 mana, cycle it. This card is very good. It's not going to be an auto-include because there might be mage decks that take advantage of board and fight more for tempo, but this is, in something like a spell mage deck, could be very good. Rustrot Viper, 3 mana 3/4 beast, neutral, tradable, battlecry, destroy your opponent's weapon. This is an excellent weapon tech card, which I'm happy for because I don't want to deal with any weapon classes. It's really frustrating. Stat line, very good. Tradable, so that means if you do happen to have this in your hand and it's not a weapon class, throw it back in your deck, find something else, or just keep it. It's a 3/3/4, it's fine. Very good. This is obviously not going to be included in every deck, but as a tech card, this is a very useful tech card. Tech cards that have tradable just are insane, because in the matchup where it's not relevant, you just spend 1 mana and cycle it back into your deck, and when it is relevant, then you have it. It's great. And this is an excellent tech card. I like this design. It's pretty cool. It's a little too good. But I mean, it's going to depend on whether or not the meta's weapon dependent or weapon heavy. 3/3/3 neutral, impatient shopkeeper, tradable rush, poop, filler. Dilutes the studies pool, I guess, for warrior a little bit. I don't think this is ever good enough to run in a normal deck. I think there's better cards to run, and even though it has tradable, I don't think that makes it good enough. Elec Mount is the priest mount, 7 mana spell. Give minion +4/+7 and taunt. When it dies, summon an Elec, and the Elec that gets summoned is a 4/7 with taunt. This is pretty good. The problem with this is it's very slow. I don't know if you can actually afford to run this in your deck. You might be able to, but that means you'll probably be wanting either minions that you expect to stick on the board, so sticky minions, maybe Death Rattle minions, or you'll want something like a 1-drop where you can go 1-drop and Elec on 8, or maybe a dormant minion, Homunculus, and set it up so that you can play this on the Homunculus when it wakes up. The card effect is powerful, but 7 mana is very hard, and people already kind of clear your board as priest to clear on stuff like Apotheosis, so this might be hard to stick. Could be interesting. It dilutes the Discover pool because this isn't a reactive card, which can be kind of nice. But this is going to be pretty fringe. I don't think it's going to see too much play. Prismatic Drill, actually, if it sees play at all. I'm not even sure if this will see play at all. Prismatic Drill Kit. This is a paladin weapon. 3 durability, 1 mana. After a friendly minion loses Divine Shield, give minions in your hand +1/+1. Lose 1 durability. We've seen hand buffs poop. This is no exception. Divine Shield, there's not enough minions to make this super consistent, and that means you have to hold cards in your hand, which means you're not on board. Theoretically, you could try to make some deck like this work with a broom or multiple brooms or rush minions, but I struggle to see that this is going to be good. It's going to be more of a meme deck. Mailbox Dancer, 2/3/2 neutral, Battlecry, Death Rattle. Battlecry, add a coin to your hand, Death Rattle, give your opponent 1. So when you play this, you immediately get a coin. When it dies, your opponent gets 1. Not very good. Some decks could use advantage of coin, maybe build up to some power turns a bit faster, but you also give your opponent 1. And a 2/3/2 doesn't really do that much. I don't really see this doing much of anything. Maybe when you ran Mana Cyclone and Mage, but that's kind of rotated out. I think this is probably not playable. Maybe some Gadgets and Auctioneer implications, but probably too slow. And I don't think you'll be running a 2/3/2 in that deck. Demon Seed. Another thing that's come back is quest line. Well, not come back. It's technically new. Quest lines, which is just a series of quests in a row. And I think most classes, if not all of them, will have one. What a quest line is, it's kind of like a quest. It starts in your opening hand. You complete the first part of the quest. Once it gets completed, you get a reward, and then you also immediately get the next quest put into play. And I think these will have 2 to 3 quests included in the quest line. I'm not sure if it's always 3. I think it's 2 to 3. And this is the Warlock one. So quest line, take 6 damage on your turns. Reward, lifesteal, deal 3 damage to the enemy or hero. Which means you deal 3 to your opponent and then heal for 3, which isn't that great, but I mean, it heals 3. This isn't the big payoff though. Now, once you complete that, this gets into play. Establish the link. Quest line, take 7 damage on your turns, and again, reward, lifesteal, deal 3 damage to the enemy hero. And then finally, the third one, quest line, take 8 damage on your turn, and the reward is Blightborn Tamsin. And what that means is you get this card put in your hand. It's a 5-mana 7/7. Battlecry, for the rest of the game, damage you take on your turn damages your opponent instead. So all the damaging effects, including life tap, including fatigue damage on your turn, your opponent will take instead. So you can make some super grindy stay alive Warlock with this quest line. It's going to be super slow, but you just throw in all the control tools and then you just tap yourself into fatigue until your opponent dies. This can be strong, but it kind of depends how many control tools are available and useful in Warlock. To take this much damage, this is 21 damage, you need a lot of healing, and it's also not that easy to do 21 damage to yourself. There are cards that exist that let you do that. Unstable Shadow Blast, just tapping, whatever. There's a few. You can find them. You just type in damage, and you'll find it in Warlock. But that's a lot of damage, so you need a lot of healing to make up for it. And you do heal a little bit back up with this for 6, but that's not going to be enough, especially if you're facing tempo decks that are trying to kill you. So I think if the meta is slow, this can be very powerful. But it's ultimately probably too slow. It's really hard to tell without seeing the whole all the cards in the expansion. I think this is playable though. Sorcerer's Gambit. This is the Mage quest line. Quest line: cast a Fire, Frost, and Arcane spell. Reward: draw a spell. So drawing the spell helps you then complete the next quest line. Cast a Fire, Frost, and Arcane spell. Reward: discover one this time. And then finally, cast a Fire, Frost, and Arcane spell, and the reward is Arcanist Dawngrasp. 5-mana 7/7, which seems to be the stat line for the quest rewards. Battlecry: for the rest of the game, you have spell damage +3. Spell damage +3 is a lot. However, you have to play 9 spells for this, which is almost a third of your deck, and there's not... And the restriction of specifically needing to cast one of each spell here, one of each school here, Fire, Frost, and Arcane, is, I think, quite a bit restrictive. So I think this, along with the other quest lines, is going to be slow, but this one in particular is going to be a bit harder to complete. Even with cards like Rune Orb to help you discover different types of school spells, I think this one's going to be the slowest and least played. This probably is unplayable. Spice Bread Baker, 4-mana 3/2, Battlecry, excuse me. Restore health to your hero equal to your hand size. Most decks won't run this. Stat line's kind of poop, and most decks don't care about healing. But in particular, this will be good in Warlock, especially nudge nudge. You know, the Warlock quest line we have back here. When you're taking that much damage, you're going to need something like this to heal back up. You will need healing healing sources. This card's actually pretty good. I mean, think antique heal bot type stuff. Now, obviously, the restriction is it's tied to your hand size, but in the deck where you're putting this in, you expect to have more cards in hand, i.e. Warlock. You could put it in some other decks as well, maybe. Probably not Priest. I don't think you want this in Priest. You could consider it, but it's probably too slow in Priest. It's probably Warlock, and not much else. Maybe in Mage as a neutral healing card in some sort of control Mage, but then you can't run spell payoff cards. I don't know. This is fringe. It's going to see play in Warlock probably. I don't know if anything else. Touch of the Nathrezim. 1 mana spell, Shadow. Deal 2 damage to a minion. If it dies, restore 4 health to your hero. More healing for Warlock. This is pretty good. This can also support Warlock running stuff like Backfire, draw more cards, and then use them to gain the healing back from the efficiency of card draw, with the ultimate goal of reaching fatigue and completing the quest line as an example. It's pretty good. Works with Tamsin as well, so you can get 2 of these back. Even if the first one doesn't kill something. Tamsin plus this, you get 2 of these, so it's like Tamsin, 1 mana, deal 4, heal 4. This card's pretty decent. Fringe play, obviously, because you're not going to run this in every type of deck, but it's not a bad tool, and you can discover it, obviously, which helps in some of the Scorpion decks. This is the Priest quest, Seek Guidance. Questline, play a 2, 3, and 4 cost card. Reward, discover a card from your deck. And that means that you discover it and you draw it. It's not discover copy. So you actually put that card in your hand once you discover it. Next part of the quest, play a 5 and 6 cost card. And the same reward, discover a card from your deck. So discovering the card from your deck makes it easier for you to then complete the following quest lines. Next, play a 7 and 8 cost card. And the reward is Zyrella's Sanctified. Taunt, Battle Cry, shuffle the Purified Shard into your deck. Well, you might be asking, what's the Purified Shard? Well, the Purified Shard literally says win the game. Again, this is very slow. You have to play a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 cost card. It doesn't have to be in order. It doesn't have to be exactly 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But it does have to be 2, 3, 4 before you play 5, 6, before you play 7, 8. I don't know how to feel about this. It's definitely slow. It's a more concrete win condition than stuff like Cthulhu the Shattered, for example, because this is literally win the game instead of deal 30 damage, which your opponent might be able to mitigate, whatever. It might be disruptible. Now, this is disruptible as well, and it's important to note that all these quest lines are disruptible. Mutinous the Devoured, once you complete the quests, they have the minion in hand that gives you the reward, so you can technically Mutinous. I think if it's a control meta, Mutinous is going to be in a lot of decks. This is kind of toxic. Now, you might be saying, if you're curving out already 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, don't you just win the game anyways? Yes and no. Tempo Priest hasn't been a thing for quite a long time, and Priest does fight for tempo, but when you know that you have inevitability with something like this, you can play defensively and play around as much as you want from your opponent, because the face damage doesn't matter if your win condition is literally destroy the enemy hero. So I think this will be okay, but it's going to be a function, whether or not this sees play is going to be a function of how aggressive the meta is. If we still see slow cards, this can absolutely see play because you have enough time for the inevitability. And obviously there's disruption available, so, you know, maybe it just gets pushed out if every deck runs Mutinous, but this win condition is pretty solid. So I don't know. I don't know how this cannot be playable. Even if it's not, you know, the best competitive deck ever, this absolutely has to be playable, right? Anyways, interesting. Jeez. Okay. Coda Mount, 4 mana spell. This is the Druid, the Druid Mount. Give a minion +4/+2 and rush. When it dies, summon a Kodo, and that Kodo is a 4/2 with rush. This is pretty good. Now, the problem with this is that you have to play minions in Druid, which we're currently not doing. Minion Druid hasn't really happened for a little bit. I guess Primordial Druid is kind of minion-centric, but you don't really have mana to play this on top of it. I don't know if this itself will see play. The effect is powerful, but I don't know if we're seeing Druid play cheap stuff. I don't think, for example, Druid's going to curve out 1, 2, 3 and then just slam this on 4. So we're expecting maybe Druid ramps up a little bit and then sticks this on a minion. But then that minion has to be impactful enough to play by itself. So this card is decent. I think this is actually a good card. 4 mana, and you get 4 rush damage if the minion dies. And if it doesn't die, you just throw a rush onto a minion with +4 attack. The problem is actually using this on something. So even though the card's good, I think it's going to be pretty fringe. I don't think we're going to see too many minion-heavy Druid lists. And in aggressive decks, it's also too slow. 4 mana for 4 damage. You probably want to play Tokeny if you're playing a more aggressive Druid deck. You'd rather be running Power of the Wild, Soul of the Forest, Pride's Fury, Arbor Up, that kind of stuff. So I don't think you have space for this. Cool card, though. The Rat King. 5 mana, 5/5 beast. This is for Hunter. Rush, Death Rattle, go dormant. Revive after 5 friendly minions die. This is interesting. Silence isn't really prevalent outside of Priest generating it randomly. So this can give Hunter a sort of late game plan if they have a lot of tokeny stuff available, and we'll be seeing a little bit of that in the next couple of cards. So the fact that it says Rush is really good, and that means that initially when you play it, you can rush into something awesome, and then when it revives, it also has Rush, because that's how Rush works. So this card is really good, and it kind of fits in line with Blizzard trying to push Hunter having slower grinder type decks, but usually Hunter still just starts smorking. So we have to discuss whether or not this is playable in a smork type deck. Maybe the beast messes with the beast tag messes with Warsong Wrangler, the 4 mana 3/4 that lets you draw and discover draw beast from your deck, give it +2/+1 and all copies wherever it is. But you're only running 2 beasts right now anyways in Hunter, so you could throw this in. I think people are only running Wolpertinger and Trampling Rhino. I'm not sure how to evaluate this. Again, if the meta is slow, this is decent, but Hunter doesn't really want to do slow stuff. No matter when they do this kind of thing, whenever Blizzard tries to push stuff like this, it almost never ends up seeing play. It's run a little bit at the start just to try it out, and then you discover that it's good, but it's not as efficient as killing your opponent. So curious to see if this sees play. I'm doubtful. The effect is strong. You might just throw it in Face Hunter anyways, but it depends how tokeny aggressive Hunters are. Look at that. The next card. 6 mana spell for Hunter. Rats of extraordinary size. Summon 7 1/1 rats. Any that can't fit on the battlefield go to your hand with +4/+4. And they are, I believe, 1 mana rats. So if your board's empty, 7 1/1s. If it's not empty and the excess ones, you get 1 mana 5/5 rats in your hand, which is actually not awful. Now, none of these rats actually have Rush. So it's 6 mana. You take a setup turn. This can proc Rat King, wink wink, if you summon 5 of... Oh, sorry, they have to die, actually. Oh, no, I don't like this card. Never mind, this card's even worse. Now, for some reason, I thought this was after you summon 5. No, this is much worse. No, this is bad. I don't like this. You have Coldcard Pack Runner, but it's too combo-y. No, yeah. Now that I'm thinking about it, this is not going to see play. And by extension, I don't think this sees play. Summoning 7 1/1s is fine, but they don't have immediate impact on the board, and that's kind of an issue, right? Even if you have bigger ones in your hand. Again, it's a slow card value. I mean, it summons stuff, but it doesn't have an immediate impact, and it's probably much too slow for Hunter. Really cool, though. This kind of mechanic type thing we haven't seen yet. This is interesting. Maybe if we had Tundra Rhino, but Tundra Rhino is rotated. So unless they have charge somehow, I don't think this is going to see play. Call the Grave. 1 mana pre-spell. Discover a Death Rattle minion. If you have enough mana to play it, trigger its Death Rattle. So there's a couple ways you can play this card, and the fact that it's 1 mana makes it very flexible, obviously. You can just play it on 1, so you can find plays for the next few turns, or you take this slow and play it with the knowledge of what Death Rattles exist to force Death Rattles. For example, if you know you're going to need Burst Healing, you can wait till turn 7. Keck W waiting for Burst Healing, but hear me out. Turn 7, Call the Grave, discover Lightshare Elemental, you immediately heal for 8, and then you play it as well. Or it doesn't have to be Light Shower, but that's an example of a way to use it for Burst Healing. You can find it a Cairn as well. If it's a value matchup, you play this on 7, you get Cairn and Bane, which is pretty good. This card is very strong and flexible, and it's Shadow, so it technically fits in the tempo style deck you would want in the Benedictus type deck. This card is powerful. I don't know if it's gonna... It probably sees play in almost all priests, though, right? This is just too good not to play. It depends on the Death Rattle pool as well. I've listed some very good Death Rattles, but it's also kind of slow. There might be some other playable ones you can include, but I think this is pretty good. This also makes One Maker nice, too. Next. Sheldross Moontree. 8 mana 5/5. This is a Druid minion. Battlecry, the next 3 spells you draw are cast when drawn. This is really interesting. You can put stuff like Survival of the Fittest in your deck, Cenarian Ward. that's about it. You can run Fungal Fortunes, but that's risky. Nourish, you take a coin flip if you gain the mana or not, and you already need mana for this, so it's kind of weird. Guess the Weight is random as well. Arbor Up could be okay. The Turtle spell is good, though. This might be playable. The problem is, in that type of deck, you're probably still running Ramp, right? You're running Studies, probably. You're running... you might be running Innervates. Maybe you don't run Innervates, but you might be running Innervates. This is kind of scary. It's by scary I mean high variance, because you could just drop poop spells that don't do anything. This also dilutes the Snare and Ward pool, which is just as a side note, not really relevant to the card itself. I'm not sure. This card seems okay. It also works with Alignment, I suppose. Works with Cthulhu spells too. It does draw a card as well. This effect seems very powerful. It's just a matter of finding the deck it fits in. I'm just gonna immediately put this under niche. As soon as someone smarter than me finds a deck for it, I'm sure it'll be good. You can do stuff you can do that I've seen people talk about already is this into Primordial Protector, which draws survival, which means that you get this into the Primordial Protector, which summons the 10 drop, and then immediately survival gets cast and you draw a card. There's definitely applications, but it's kind of slow. And this itself does not actually have immediate board impact. If you think about what Primordial Druid does right now, it needs to be kind of reactive. And this delays the reactiveness by a turn, because usually you want to be blooming out stuff like GA, Guardian Animals. You want to be blooming out Snare and Ward if you need armor, rushing stuff in. So this does not have immediate impact. It makes your next kind of turns powerful, but we'll see if the payoff is good enough. But it's niche. There's no way this will not see play at some point, because this effect is powerful. You just have to find the right deck to play it in. Demonic Assault, 4 mana Warlock spell. Deal 3 damage, and this can go face. Summon 2 1/3 Voidwalkers with Taunt. This is pretty good. It builds a wall and removes stuff. This is pretty good. It's not busted, but it's good. You get 6 health of taunts. I mean, no, it's pretty good. 6 health of taunts, and you deal 3 to kill something. That's pretty good. Sets up for AoEs for later, buys you some time as well. This is a pretty good card. All right. Varian, King of Stormwind, 8 mana, 7/7. Battlecry, draw a Rush minion to gain Rush. Repeat for Taunt and Divine Shield. So this is similar to Corpse Taker, I believe it was called, a while back. So it checks for Rush minion in your deck. If you have one, you draw it, it gains Rush. It checks for Taunt minion in your deck. If you have one, it draws it, and you get Taunt. And the same thing for Divine Shield. And it's neutral, which Corpse Taker also is neutral. This seems okay. I don't know how many decks can take advantage of this. I think most decks are running, to some extent, Rush minions. So that's going to be pretty easy. Taunt, this makes sense in a defensive deck. You probably don't want this in a more aggressive, tempo-oriented deck. But in control or slower decks, this seems fine. Divine Shield's a bit harder to find. Yeah, this might fit in Paladin, but I don't know what Paladin looks like. The effect is good. I think this is fine. And specifically, you'll need enough Rush minions to make this consistent. But if this has Rush and Divine Shield, it's already pretty good. The problem is it's slow. So, niche, but probably playable. Overdraft. 1 mana Shaman spell, Wandmaker. Tradable. Unlock your overloaded mana crystals to deal that much damage. This card is busted. Perpetual Flame plus this. Holy crap. This can go face too. This is actually just illegal. The only thing that makes this not illegal is, and it's tradable, that's another thing. The only thing that makes this not illegal is that Shaman doesn't have that much draw. So this effect is powerful. And of course, it limits Shaman only by the fact that Shaman doesn't have much card draw. Yet, maybe there'll be some more stuff revealed. But card is good. It probably does see play to some extent. Maybe not on every list. In fact, probably not on every list, because you don't overload enough to make it useful. It's not a nature spell, though, which messes up Dungeoneer. Maybe you don't run this. Maybe you just discover this sometimes. Yeah, because if you're running this in Perpetual Flame, Dungeoneer doesn't actually work very often. Whatever. The effect is powerful. You might not run it just because of the way you have to build Shaman, because Shaman card draw sucks right now, which is unfortunate. But I guess if Shaman card draw was good, this would be really busted. Yeah, maybe in a mid-range to control type deck for Shaman that runs Wandmakers, but I mean, mid-range control Shaman doesn't exist, so I don't know. Effect is powerful, might seem play at some point. I don't think we're naturally putting this in our deck actually right now. Now that I've thought more about it. Unfortunate, but cool. Similar to Lava Shock, but powerful. Lothar. This is a warrior minion, 7/7/7. At the end of your turn, attack a random enemy minion. If it dies, gain +3/+3. Solid. It's like a big flanking strike. Seems okay. It's random, but it's a threat, kind of like removal. Seems okay. Might be playable. Maybe fringe. Depends on the meta. A lot of you run this in tempo decks. I talk a lot about control cards because control cards are what you run in control decks is really dependent on the meta because you have to run cards that line up nicely against what other people are playing, like i.e. removal tools. And this is technically a removal tool, but it could also be proactive. So you might run this in tempo stuff as well. Condition this bad boy. You don't have 7 drops really in warrior outside of mutinous, which isn't really. So maybe this fits in tempo warrior. I don't know. It's slow. And if your opponent, I don't know. And if your opponent goes too wide, it's not really good either. I don't know. This might be niche. I don't think this is unplayable, but I don't think this is just nutty either. Somewhere in between. Probably niche. Best in Shell. 6 mana druid spell. It's tradable as well. Nice. Summon 2 2/7 turtles with taunt. This is insane. This is really, really good. 14 health of taunt. Very, very good anti-aggro tool. Overgrowth into this. Coin overgrowth into this works as well, which is insane. It's not a nature spell, but like, eh. Yeah, and this would fit in the deck where we're playing this guy. Because drawing that means that it gets played immediately. It's kind of cool. All right. Tiny Toys, 6 mana shaman spell. Summon 4 random 5-cost minions, make them 2/2. I hate this card. I'm very upset that they made this. I'm actually just livid at this. This is so dumb. This is such a strong card to build. To like, think of how many times you've been screwed by Jandis, and now just ramp it up. Now, obviously they're 2/2s, but there's still plenty of really annoying fucking 2/2s that you can get. And this also makes Evolve Shaman really good, right? Weapon on 5, ship this on 6. I hate this. I don't care if it's not good. I hate that this exists. This is incredibly frustrating to play against. Not, yeah, I don't know. The card's going to be good. I think it's good. Obviously, again, not auto-include because you don't want to just make minions for the sake of making minions. But in Evolve Shaman, this is good to evolve, and it's good to not evolve too. So this is going to be good. I'm upset about this. Park Panther, 4/4/4, Beast, Druid card. Rush, whenever this attacks, give your hero +3 attack this turn. So it's a nice defensive tool for Druid. Because it's a beast, you can also run this with Living Seed. Living Seed on 2, draw this. This costs 3. Play this on 3, rush, kill a minion, and then deal 3 attack. It's particularly important that this says 3 attack, because if it said 2 attack, it'd be worse. Think of all the shaman minions your opponents are playing, or warrior minions that have 3 health. The fact that this has 3 health is very, very big, and the fact that it's a beast is big. So this is Living Seed synergy. You don't have to run Living Seed, but I think Seed into this is going to be quite good for a defensive tool set. I don't know if we're running this in many Druid decks, or if in all the Druid decks. The current iteration of Drombra Druid on ladder happens to be very, very spell heavy, so you can't really run that many minions. But I could see it shifting a little bit to include this if some other cards come out that we want to put in the decks. This is good. Might be fringe, but it's definitely playable. Shiver Their Timbers, 1 mana warrior spell. Deal 2 damage to a minion. If you control a pirate, deal 5 instead. We're not currently seeing Sword and Board in decks as a control tool to deal 2 damage, and I don't think you want to be running this in a tempo deck too much. We don't have enough pirates to make a full pirate deck. If you do, this isn't bad. 1 mana deal 5 to get through a minion and then start pushing with your pirates is okay. I don't think this is going to see much play. If some more pirates get printed, maybe there's enough support for a tempo style deck. I don't know if we want to play this in a control warrior deck, because the restriction of having a pirate, well, first of all, 1 mana deal 2, is that good enough? We're currently not good enough because we're not running Sword and Board, which also gives us armor. So now we have to have the restriction. Okay, are we running enough pirates in our deck that we can support doing this? And the answer is probably not. We're not even running Sword Eater right now, right? We're playing Outrider's Axe, and that's it. Rush Warrior, probably not. You put more spells, you make conditioning worse. Yeah, I don't think we run this. And finally, Cornelius Rome, 6 mana, 4/5 neutral card. At the start and end of each player's turn, draw a card, which means you jam this on 6, you draw a card for the end of your turn, and then you immediately draw a card for the start of your opponent's turn. And if it sticks, you get 2 more cards, and then probably another 2 more after that. This is insane card draw. So worst case, 6 mana, 4/5, draw 2 cards. And this basically is taunt if you don't die. It's pretty good. This is a pretty good card draw engine. Honestly, this card's pretty solid. Again, it's slow, but a lot of the stuff we've seen has been kind of slow so far. So I don't think this will not see play. This is pretty good. And the fact that it's neutral means that you can put it in any deck that needs to cycle cards. I think this is particularly good. All right, well, that's part 1 of the United and Stormwind set review. We'll get part 2 out in a little bit once more cards have been revealed and we can discuss them. This one's a little bit longer because I kind of put it off for a little bit. My bad on that. But be sure to, subscribe to my channel, comment if you think I'm completely wrong on any of these cards, and let me know what you think about the set coming out. Let me know if any of these cards tickle your fancy, and like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.